So we're having some problems with the way those quizzes are loading. You can't see the quiz as they were created. And somehow I picked chapter 16 for chapter 1. So those, just don't worry about those quizzes for now. We'll figure out something else. I'll just stick to the writing assignments, and that'll be coming up in week 3. So that's that on those quizzes. Just don't worry about those for now. And I apologize for those of you who may have spent some time on those. Make sure that you submit your week 2 discussion. So that would be good if you can make sure you get that done before midnight tomorrow. And when you're doing discussions and especially on the writing assignments, if you're citing some source that you gather that information from, be sure that you use a citation. This is going to be very important as you do research. You want to make sure that you're giving credit to those individuals who did the research prior to your investigation. So that's a big part of the literature review portion of research. So make sure that you start getting used to citing your sources in APA format. The 7th edition is the standard, the industry standard for research. Okay, so let's get right into it. So what makes effective research? So here's a chart that kind of shows the different categories of what makes effective research. And I'll just zero in on these. So it's just the purpose is clearly defined. So the purpose of business research, the problem involved or decision to be made should be clearly defined in writing. This statement of the decision problem should include its scope, limitations, and the precise meanings of all concepts, constructs, and variables significant to the research. So if you've been able to do the reading, and I hope that most of you have been able to, what do you think this is really trying to teach us? Why is this so important that we do this? We clearly define this the purpose of the research. How does that impact the overall research study or the process? I mean, they give you some of the information is there, you know, but why is this such an important? So they said that this, you know, this is. Let's go back to the previous. So this makes for effective research. Why is this important? Anyone?
Professor, I think that it's important because otherwise, if the purpose of research will not be clearly defined, then it means that some ambiguity in the research because we don't know which kind of questions the research will answer in the end, and at the same time, it might influence on the how to say to the necessity of such research in total, I mean.
Okay,
because if the question is not correct or not clearly defined, then the results of research cannot be reliable.
Okay, so everything that comes after that is really not going to align with what you're hoping to discover in the research, right? So this this is a very important step. You need to know where you want to go in order to get there in a way. So very good, very good. Miss, is it Liazat? Liazat? Is that how you?
Yes, yes, you are spelling right.
Okay, very good. Okay, so then let's go to the slide here. Okay, so the next category in what makes effective research is to research, design, planned, and executed. So the research design is planned and executed. So it says the procedural design of the research and its choice among competing designs should be clearly described and justified. Procedures should be detailed and carefully followed to yield results that are as objective as possible. So that's very important. Researchers must avoid personal bias in selecting research and sampling designs and collecting and recording data. So this is a very important step, and it's interesting because this is almost a contradiction, because you're doing the research because you want to discover something. You have an idea of what you think you might discover. You have a problem and you want to find out what are these different variables, and what are going to be the outcome when you test them. So it is difficult to not insert your own perspectives in and to have some biases. So what do you think about that? How do we avoid it's just we must avoid personal bias when selecting research. How do we do that? How is that even possible? Anyone want to?
Can you repeat your question, Professor?
Yes. So how can we possibly avoid personal bias when we're selecting a research, when we're selecting a research in our sampling designs, the things that we want to include in the research study? How do we avoid being biased about that?
So I think personal bias, I think we can definitely, when we are collectively doing the research and really executing it from the perspective of the entire team or entire organization, I think that's where we can avoid any personal inputs in there. I mean, personal inputs are also the part of that, but I think well-researched material and really thinking through from the organizational, from the group perspective, from the team perspective, we can definitely avoid any kind of such scenarios.
Okay, very good. Yes. Yes.
In pharmaceutical industry, to avoid any bias, we make any research randomized. We choose the samples and we make it double blinded. So neither the sample nor the researcher knows about the question or about the materials they are using. What is this? I don't know if it's applicable here or not.
That's an excellent example. Thank you. Yes. So very good. And then we'll get more into the research process here in a minute, and we'll talk a little bit more about hypotheses as we go on. But yes, it's very good. So doing those a double-blind study, that's definitely one way to avoid a bias. So good, very good. Okay, so high ethical standards are applied. So this is definitely important. Researchers often have significant latitude in designing and executing projects. They face ethical dilemmas. At each stage of the process, and must be prepared to address these issues. Research design must include safeguards against causing mental or physical harm, exploitation, invasion of privacy, and/or loss of dignity to participants, as well as ensuring the adequate training and safety of data collectors. Procedures for ensuring data integrity are critical. So this is very, very important. One of the things you'll hear a lot as you and some of you do, you currently do research in your fields, is to protect the data. They always say protect the data, and in fact, you're charged with protecting that data for a certain period of time. So why is it so important to protect that data?
I can weigh in there because I also work as a data analyst along with being lead business analyst. Data, because it depends on the organization, and then the level of personalization in that data. Because if there are any personal data involved, suppose it's a clinical organization, and then the patient's data is there and their personal data is there, then we need to hide that data to be able to just show the research which is needed, and not really personalize it and include the personal data there. And there are various ways to do that these days, like with technical data masking and all. In the reports we produce, the reports which are safe to share publicly and not including any personal data in there.
Very good. So a lot of the data, when it involves participants, is coded. Is that correct? I mean, I think somebody has
Yes, coded, and then how we are producing that data, like ETL procedures are used to be able to transform that data in a data which is safe to use and share publicly.
Okay, very good. Very good. Okay. That's very good. Good. Okay, adequate analysis for decision makers' needs. So the analysis of the data should use appropriate techniques, be classified in ways that assist the researcher in researching pertinent insights and conclusions, and clearly reveal the findings of procedures to have led to those conclusions. Insights should be limited to those for which the data provide an adequate basis. When statistical methods are used, the probability of error should be estimated. The criteria of statistical significance applied. These should be revealed. The validity, rather, and reliability of data should be checked carefully. So, so that's a lot to unpack. So we need to estimate the probability of error, and the criteria of statistical significance applied. These should be revealed. So along the research process, and in your research study, at some point you have to reveal some of the limitations that you had in that research study. And you'll see this a lot when you read research studies in journals. They'll talk about the limitations, and those limitations are very important because they'll reveal a lot about the end results. What could have occurred had they not had those limitations. And sometimes it's just access to different information, access to data that creates these limitations. Sometimes it can be environmental things, timing. I was doing a journal review for an article that someone submitted for a research study that was interrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic. They couldn't do all of the research on everything they had planned. An entire group that was supposed to be part of that research, they couldn't have access to because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So there's different things there. What else could this mean? This says adequate analysis for decision makers' needs. So Why is that important for the decision maker?
Because the results of the research.
Cal, I can barely hear you. Yep, please. Mohammed, Mr. Hussein, I could hear you starting to speak, but then you faded out. Oops.
I think we missed him. I can talk about it. I definitely want to give others the chance. Sorry.
Okay.
So it's basically, in my understanding, when we are really doing the research and really trying to systematically understanding the complex problem and exploring wide range of potential solutions and identifying the most effective approaches. So it's important that that analysis needs to be in depth and sufficient enough for business to make decisions on the basis of that, because if it's not really thorough and it's not done properly and in depth, it's difficult to reach out on a conclusion. But understanding the time, there should be a time limit of completing a research. But it definitely depends. It's solo decision of that organization or group, that how long we want to keep on researching, to what level, to be able to reach out to on a decision which is sufficient for the business to really cover everything.
Okay, very good. Yes. Yes. So I mean, they're the ones who are invest. So they're investing money and time, right, and resources in this. So very good. Yep. That is right.
Professor Rex, I think the most crucial part is the statistical analysis, because if the data is not significantly different or significantly approved, we cannot take the results as guaranteed.
Okay. Yes, that's excellent. Very good. Okay, so as I was saying earlier, the limitations are frankly revealed, and so this is why, while few research designs are perfect, the research should report with complete frankness flaws in the research design or design execution and estimate their effect on the findings. This is what I was saying earlier. Some of the imperfections may have little effect on the validity and reliability of the data. Others may invalidate them entirely, and that's very true. It could, the results could be flawed. And as a decision maker, you should question the value of research about which no limitations are reported. So that's very interesting, right? So let's say someone reports the results of a research study, and you're the decision maker, you're the manager, and they don't report any limits. According to this, that should be that should be the proverbial red flag, right? That's where you say, well, wait a minute, there were no limits, no limitations. There was nothing that you could question about the research. So how do you feel about that? I mean, that's do you agree? Is that true, or is there a possibility that a research study could be flawless, where there's no limitations at all?
I think limitations also a part of research, to what limit. And I think I'm again repeating myself that it depends on the organization and business, to what level of analysis and research needed on a particular topic. So I think it's definitely solo decision of organization or group or a person doing the research. But limitations needs to be decided definitely, that to what level we need to do a research and at what point we need to stop.
Okay, very good. So it says, while few research designs are perfect, the researchers should report with complete frankness flaws in the research design. It says as a decision maker, you should question the value of research about which no limitations are reported. So that's you know, almost saying that you should expect that there's going to be some limitations in that research. So very good, Samuel. Thank you. And thank you. Okay. All right. Then you want to report your findings unambiguously. So, except when confidentiality is imposed, research reports should reveal candidly the resources of data and the means by which data were obtained. This is very important. Researchers should report procedural details to make it possible to estimate the validity and reliability of the data and increase confidence in the research itself, as well as any recommendations based on the research. The researchers always specify the conditions under which their conclusions seem to be valid. Presentation of insights and conclusions should be comprehensive, easily understood by the audience, and organized so that the relevant decision maker can readily locate critical information. Okay, so so there's a lot there. So what exactly are they trying to tell us here in this portion of in this particular category here for effective research? Why are these things important? Why is it important to be unambiguous when you report the findings of your research study? And you can put it in the chat if that's easier for you. Okay, so basically what they're saying is that it should be something that can be read and comprehended by the layperson. So, you know, the manager isn't necessarily going to have the same skills that you have as a researcher, or you might not have the same skills that the researchers that you hire have. So they need to be able to communicate their research findings and the results in a way that you can comprehend it and use it, because it's not going to be usable for you if it's written in a way or presented in a way that you can't comprehend it and then make a decision based on the information that they've to lead to right decisions. Yep. Mr. Hussein, and mobilize the organization to take right actions. Yep, yes. And Samia, yep, remember that even with careful consideration, but the potential for ambiguity or misinterpretation, we still, yep, we still exist. Yep. It is important to critically evaluate the information, consider alternative perspectives. Yep, and seek further clarification when necessary. Yes, thank you. And yep, and then with us, I believe research methodologies, results, and process should be open for everyone so that anyone that uses the research as a secondary source of data can be confident about it and use it, and so on. Yes, very good. And then Mr. Obella, to be sure that the result are based on the correct methodology. Yes, yes, yes. All of those are very good, very good, very true. Good. Okay, all right. So we're going to go ahead and if we can take a break here. If someone needs to take a break, I know you guys have been waiting a little longer than I have. And then when we get back, we'll do a poll. So, and I like that someone says here to be sure that the results are based on the correct method. Good. Most reviewers are attacking the research through method. Yeah, correct. Through methodology. Yes, that's good. Okay. All right. So we'll come back in a few minutes here. Okay. All right. Well, welcome back. Here we are. So this, I put in the chat a link to the Poll Everywhere poll. And so when you get a chance to go to that poll, and here are the questions for that. And this is the link that I put in. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. So go ahead and as you come back in, just go ahead and go to that poll and we'll. Okay, so let's see here. Yeah, looks like everyone's probably had a chance to participate in that. So let me. Okay, so if you chose B, then you're correct. That's right. That is a good hypothesis is not listed as one of the actions that leads to good or effective research. So very good. All right, so let's get into the research process here. And you'll notice that there's 5 stages in that process. And this graphic here just kind of gives us a visual of how that flows. Okay, so in the stages of the research process. Stage 1, clarify the research question. Stage 2 is to design the research project. Stage 3, collect and prepare the data. Stage 4, analyze and interpret the data. And 5 is report insights and recommendations. So let's dive into those a little more. So stage 1. All right, so in this stage, the purpose of this stage in the research process is to determine whether research should be conducted in the first place. So that's a good place to start, right? You want to know if it's even viable to even do the research. During this stage, managers must answer the following questions. 1, what are the management dilemmas, and which should be the focus? So that's really important. 2, what do you know that might help define and solve the dilemma? Good. So maybe you don't even have to do research, or maybe there's another way to address that, or maybe that will help drive the research. Either way, number 2 is very important. So 3, what information do we need to make a decision? That's critical. And then, so with knowing this information, improve the decisions we make to resolve the dilemma. That's also very important. And where will the funding come from for any proposed research? So that's getting to the main focus in a lot of organizations is budget, right? You have to have budget. It takes budget to conduct research. You have personnel who have to be paid. You have resources they have to get, materials they have to. Sometimes it requires you to pay fees to access some data that you want for your research study, and or maybe to have access to a physical facility where you're going to be conducting research. There's a lot involved there, and several of you who mentioned that you currently do research, and you would know this from personal experience. So very good. Identify and prioritize the dilemmas. The managers don't have unlimited resources, so they have to focus these where they believe they will accomplish the most, and that's very true, right? They have to look at okay, what's going to have the best return on their investment in this research. So this stage begins at the most general level with the management dilemmas, a symptom of an actual problem such as rising costs, increasing tenant move-outs from an apartment complex, declining sales, increasing employee turnover in a restaurant, a larger number of product defects during the manufacture of automobile, an increasing number of letters and phone complaints about post-purchase delivery choice service. So it sounds like this category here really touches on what a few of you have talked about in your personal experiences with doing research. So I know Samuel's talked about this. Elena has talked about it. We heard from a few of from Lizette. These are definitely things that would have to be taken into consideration. So that's stage one. And anytime you want to make a comment or if you have a question, please just speak up. We'll get through these as we get through them. So stage two, design the research project. Okay, so the research design is a blueprint for collecting data that fulfills the objectives and answers questions. This stage of the planning covers two sub-processes, data collection design and sampling design. So in the data collection design, what data needs to be collected, by what methods, and by what procedures. The steps in this process include define the data needed by classification and level, as well as content, define the methods of collection, define the procedures and protocols for collection, including timing and location. So so let's talk about this a little bit. So define the data needed. So, and this is by classification and level as well as content. What could that possibly mean? And then this define the methods of collection. What are some of the methods that are used to collect data? And then the protocols for collection, including timing and location. Okay, so would the survey be one of the methods of collecting data? Would that be a viable method? What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
So, Professor, I think surveys are the great way of collecting data, but there are other ways also, and definitely depends on the organization, exactly what kind of data they are looking to collect. And for example, in one of my project, we were actually doing the research on a cancer medicine, and then there the prospect of collecting the data is totally different. That patients are actually going into those centers, and then their data is collected there itself, and then via the ETL tools, we are getting that data from various centers. But in general, I think surveys are best way to collect data.
Okay, so yeah, surveys are very, very good. One of the ways that I collected data was I worked with organizations that were conducting training for wireless telecom engineers, and they had the results of the training for each of the participants in these 3 different types of training. So I wanted to focus on what the results were for more hands-on, and then more of the lecture type of training where they were sitting and receiving information, but there was no real engagement. So that data was all of the analytics that were dumped from their training results for the results of exams. So they had the diagnostic assessments. So there's a pre-test, and then they had the assessment during the training, and then they had the post-assessment or the summative assessment. So I was able to look at the 3 different types. So that was one portion of that research, was collecting that data based on the results of the training, and how well the participants did in those different training in those different courses. So and that's similar to the way a lot of education statistics are collected, is by looking at the results of exams. These some of the big exams that a lot of the secondary education systems use in the U.S. and in other areas, where they're looking at the aptitude of the students based on the results of these exams. So that data is collected, and it's tested, and they look at different areas to determine what factors are affecting the student learning outcomes. And again, I did also use surveys. So I also used surveys to get some information back, and to also see how well students were retaining some of the knowledge. So that's one way to use surveys as well. And of course, you can collect a whole lot of information on surveys. You can collect demographics and other things through surveys. So very good, good, very good. Then the sampling design is for the sub-processes for what the target population does. The data needs to be collected, how and from how many cases. The steps in this process include: define the target population, define a case, define the number of cases needed, and define procedure for how each case will be recruited or selected. So that's the rigor, right, and involved in research. So that's where you're going to get a lot of the time is spent there. So very good. So good. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so stage 3, I highlighted some things here because it was a very wordy. Collect and prepare the data. So when collecting the data, it says experiments observation studies, online surveys, focus groups, photo ethnographic studies, and even research and gaming are just a few of the methods used today. So research and gaming. So that's interesting. I have not used that before. Has anyone had any experience with research and gaming? That's how would that look if anyone's had any experience with that as a participant or as a researcher? Please speak up and share that with the group. And then prepare the data. Data preparation processes address recording errors, improve legibility, and clarify unclear or unexpected responses. So that's also very important too. A lot of times when you're doing surveys, you'll find that some of the participants will not answer all of the questions. So you know that you can't use it. Those particular responses are not usable because it'll affect the overall data. If you have someone who didn't respond to one of the questions, it kind of throws things off. Sometimes people aren't very forthcoming with information. They will not answer surveys honestly, so that could also throw off your results. So it says computers have made it possible to enter, merge, edit, and code data. We talked about this earlier, using fewer steps and at a faster speed, shortening the time frame for many research projects, and that's very true. So that's been a great thing to have that computer aided information. Okay, so analyze and interpret the data. This is stage 4. Researchers generate information by analyzing data, looking for patterns, by looking for relationships among variables, and applying statistical techniques. All right, so and then give you an example here. For example, assume a researcher polls 2,000 people from prospects for a new generation of mobile phone, and that's your target population. Each respondent responds to 4 questions. 1, do you prefer the convenience of pocket phone over existing mobile phones? 2, are there transmission problems with pocket phone? Is pocket phone better suited to worldwide transmission than your existing mobile phone? And 4, would costs alone persuade you to purchase the mobile phone? So that's one way to collect data for potential consumers. And again, some of you do this professionally and you have experience with this as well. So, any comments on this, on these first 4? I don't want to just keep motoring through this. All right. Okay, so since stage 5, the research process, report insights and recommendations. So in this stage of the process, the researcher reports and transmits findings, insights, and any recommendations to the manager. So that's basically the purpose for the research is to arrive at this stage and to use the research findings to make recommendations to help the organization. Increasingly, managers ask researchers to make recommendations, actions the managers should take that are empirically supported based on their interpretations of the data. Okay, so let's see. Any comments on that? And in here, this is something I mentioned earlier, managers don't always have the same statistical knowledge as the researchers. So careful choice of words and providing explanations as needed is important. So that's very, very true. We have to make sure that it's digestible. Yes, Samia.
Yeah, Professor, I think when it comes to reports insight, and then what we are recommending to business in those reports is very crucial and very important, because those reports needs to be very, very aligned with what the business needs are, their requirements are, and if it's not meeting, then it's not useful for them. And then I think I disagree that whoever is the researcher and the manager have the same knowledge. It's not true in many ways, because the manager level or the business level, they only know about the business, and then exactly what they need in their business. But whoever is doing the research is actually have more in-depth knowledge to be able to pull out all that information and then lay out that information in those reports and tools. So I think, like, even though they have like different skill sets, but the goal is same, that we want all the information and requirements gathered carefully in those reports, which is like more meaningful and useful for business.
Very good. So those individuals would be data analysts, right? And managers aren't necessarily going to have the same skills as a data analyst. That's why they hire them, because they're specialists in that area. So very good. That's very, very true. So let's see here. Okay, so let's see if we can actually get this to play for us this time. we'll watch this video, then we'll talk about some of the things that she says in here. So let's go ahead and I'll move this over as soon as it comes over. Okay, let me see. Do you see the video?
Grammarly Go, your go-to solution for getting quality work
Yes.
done quick.
We can hear, but we cannot see the video.
Okay, let me go ahead and do that. Share the correct screen here. And there it is, right there. Okay. Okay, now are you seeing it now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay.
Research as an avenue for curiosity. Before we get started, I just wanted to get a couple of definitions out of the way, because there are different types. So the first kind of research is probably the research that we all think about initially. It's gathering data, finding information on a topic that has a solid knowledge base behind it. So this is the kind of research that we would do if you were going on a trip. So finding information on a hotel or museums that you could go to while you're there. This is also the same type of research that you would do if you were doing a research paper on a historical figure like Thomas Edison. You'd take the time to go check out a book, look at some information on the web, find all of that information. So this is what a lot of us do on a day-to-day basis, but what I want to look at is different. So I want to look at research as an active task. It's pursuing new implementations and ideas to further the fields you're working in. So this is taking your curiosity and putting it into action. So this can happen in a lot of different fields, from biology and communication to psychology and computer science. And this is the kind of research that I love. So in addition to being a student here, I've had the opportunity for the past year and a half to work in a lab doing research in machine learning and computer vision. And to give a little bit of context behind what that is, we work with deep neural networks, a form of machine learning, to teach a computer that when we show it a picture of a cat, it should classify it as a cat and not as a dog or a boat or anything in between. So in a broader context, however, I have the opportunity to do meaningful work in and contribute to one of the most relevant and growing fields in today's society. In the past year and a half, after one of my professors saw something in me that I never would have seen in myself, I've had the opportunity to find my passion. I kind of knew it was my passion when I started going home and thinking and eating dinner, and 20 minutes later I'd pull out my laptop and start working again, because I would find a new idea or something else that I wanted to work on, because if my experiment's not running, it's broken and there's something I can do to fix it, or if I have an idea to how better get information out of that experiment I'm running. So I have the opportunity to work with people who are extraordinarily intelligent every day. They help me to understand the theory behind what we're working on and the big picture impact that our work is going to have. So I always take the stance of assuming that I'm the dumbest person in the room. But I'm learning to ask more intelligent questions and using my curiosity to drive what we are doing and how to better use that in furthering the field. So I definitely know more than I did a year ago. I'm more comfortable with the fundamentals. I no longer stumble over the vocabulary that I read every day, and I'm less intimidated, not completely not intimidated, but less intimidated by the mathematically intensive parts of the papers that I read. But the beautiful thing about it is there's always more research being done. So there's always more papers to read, more vocab to stumble over, my favorite, and there's always new ideas and avenues to pursue because of this. So the difficult part about this is that it's hard. You are never going to have a perfect experiment. You're never going to have an idea. You're always going to have an idea or a project that doesn't work out like you hoped it to. I just got finished working on a project a couple months ago where I'd spent 3 months trying to get it to work, and we were like, I guess it doesn't work at all, so let's move on to the next one. So we do get to learn from this information, though. We always are going to learn something from these so-called failures, and it's often these gaps between the expectations and the actual outcomes of what we're learning that provide us with the anomalies in order to ask another question, to push the field further, shift directions, and continue to work. I have a joke with a lot of my friends that it's a 70-30 split. So we spend 70% of our time banging our heads against the wall and trying to understand the theory behind what we're doing, trying to understand why it's not working. But it's that 30% that keeps us going through that. So it's the 30% of crazy success where your experiments are running, you're getting information out of your experiments, the results are good, and it's just that feeling where you get that in the pit of your stomach because it's working. You're getting what you want. So this 30% is what keeps me going through the 70%, especially when I pair it with the motivation behind what we're doing. So the pursuance of research is the pursuance of knowledge as an active task. So you're finding out new things and new things that didn't exist before. So the field itself is inherently competitive. All of the labs are always vying for that next accuracy jump or the next novel idea that's going to change the field. And that's an opportunity. So we get to use these and force collaboration between them as well, because all of the authors are always willing to answer your questions. They're always willing to facilitate discussions, and they're always interested about your work as well, because something that you say may be the anomaly or the spark that hits in their brain that leads them to a new idea. So underneath all of the competition, we are just people who are really curious about what we're working on, and we want to do more and want to know more in order to push the boundaries of what we previously thought was possible. Thank you.
If you want to join a community all connected by the same calling, you
Okay. Okay. So what do you think about that? I like to read or hear your comments on that presentation. Yes.
Yes. Hello, Professor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. I want to comment a little based on her presentation. What I observed and what I could deduce so far is when she was making a remark based on the comments made by um, according to Thomas, he was talking about when you carry out a research um, and find out that you've not been able to achieve enough results, not really that they have failed, but that they're just trying to find out other ways to do uh, better. In other words, she's trying to let us know that even when it seems we are not succeeding in our research work, but we don't need to give up. And she also went ahead to talk about motivation, and that in motivations will a lot of factors need to actually motivate us while we are carrying out a research work. We want to know more. We want to do. Want to uh, do more of the work, and we want to also know more of what to do. So in research work, it actually entails total dedication and total determination and motivation to achieve results. Thank you.
Very, very good. Thank you very much. So yes. So she talked about that 70-30 split, right? 70% of the time they failed. And it was that 30% that kept them, moving on. And you're very correct. She also talked about finding some success through that failure. So they were able to learn things from the failure. Very good. Thank you. And tell me how to pronounce your name. Is it?
My name is Echito Waji Wellington. Echito Waji Clement Wellington.
Thank you very much, Itichivai. Okay, thank you so much for those comments. Anyone else? What do you think about that? But why would you want to continue on if you're going to fail 70% of the time? And I mean, in any other context, that's not success, right? I mean, if you were, for instance, in a college exam, you get 30%. That's not success. So what were some of her explanations on why they would move on? Did she write? Talked about that a little bit. Anyone else have any comments on that?
Professor Rex, I have a comment about 70% failure. There is nothing in research called failure. It's something that this is not the correct way. So I discovered that's not the correct way, which is considered as a success at the same time. So I will not take this process because it will not work. So it's even success, 70% failure. It's even success that I discovered the way that I will not take.
So you discovered that is the wrong way to do it, which is still the discovery. So you have some results from your research. So you discovered something. Oh, very good. Something that you didn't know before. That's very good. Very good. Yeah.
And sometimes, Professor Rex, there is some results that appear that's not related to the research, that is beneficial for the company. And during stage 5, I think it's missing in the recommendation, some recommendations that we need to make another research about another topic. I can make example about this in our pharmaceutical industry about the Viagra. It was not invented for the current use. It was invented for coronary heart disease, but they discovered adverse effects, so make another researches for it.
That's very true, and that's an excellent example. Now with some of the medications that are used for type 2 diabetes are being sold for weight reduction.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's a very
and they
good.
are making researches for now about weight reductions. To be approved from the FDA about the weight reduction.
Isn't that interesting? So very good. Those are very good feedback. So let me go ahead. I'll share my screen again because you mentioned your report insights and recommendations. So good. Anyone else? I thought there was a lot there that she shared in that video about the term motivation has come up a few times. Why is that important? What is the what is the purpose of motivation in research? So you get to that one portion, you find something that 70% of what you thought was the right way to do it turns out it's not the right way. It's not the right approach. But this motivation is that does that cause motivation? Does that give you the motivation to carry on, to that you've discovered this, or is that something else going on there? Here, I'll go back to the you notice how in this diagram, and also how they have the stages listed here, it's in a descending order. But is that necessarily the order that this is all going to go in? Is there any, let me go back to that. Is there any way to, at any point, would any of these be iterative where you repeat something? Or do you just move on to the next step? Could you remove any of these steps and still be following the research process?
So, Professor, I think I would say the last step, which says, not the last, the second last stage, which says analyze and interpret the data. I think that's a continued process, even if when we create the reports and we provide our insights and recommendation and all the research data points to the business, still there is this process still continues, that then it's the business turn to analyze that data, interpret that data, and modify that data according to their needs, and keep on analyzing. So I think it's like a never it's a never stoppable process until they actually reach out on a decision that what exactly they are going to do with this data results.
Okay, very good. So the analyze and interpret data portion or stage of this research process is iterative. I think that's what you're saying, is that
Yes,
this is something.
yes.
Very good. Okay, good. Okay, but at any phase in this process, would there ever be a time when you need to go back and collect more data? Would that ever happen?
I think there must be milestones and a control. So if we did not collect enough data, we must return back and ask the correct questions, because the methodology might be wrong, or we are asking the wrong questions. So I think there must be milestones and point of return that we can return to one step backward.
Very good. Very good. Okay, so
Professor,
yes.
sorry to interrupt, but I think when it comes to really doing the entire process all over again, it's going to really hit the budget, that because every organization have a certain budget to be able to complete that research and analysis in a particular time window. And if it's really, if we didn't do our homework correctly, that we did not collected enough information to be able to really start this process of analysis and collect correct data, and then we have to really go back to that approach back. So I think it's going to really hit the budget and organization's budget. So I think that would be the step they will always want to avoid, unless for any reason they were failed to collect that important data.
Okay, very good. So two excellent points. So in academic research, where you have an endowment that's paying for the research study, and of course they have budgets as well, but there's a little more leeway than there might be with a corporate budget for research, because that hits the bottom line. So that's a very good point. So in some cases, if the data is inadequate and the sample size is too small for the type of research that we're trying to do, you may need to go back and collect more data. But again, as Samuel said, it might not be in the budget. You may end up having to scrap that research study. That was one of the things that she talked about in the video as well, is they had worked on something for, she said, 3 months, and then to decide, oh, they have to just drop it, as it wasn't worth moving forward. But they did learn some things along the way, and I guess they would just gather that information and then use what they were able to gather. So very good, very good. Anyone else? So this is where we're talking about the research process here, and again, this is an overview, so we're going to go through this again and in more depth when we are in some subsequent chapters. But this is just an overview of this research process for this particular lecture and for this chapter 2. So let's see. Let's see. There's some of the things we want to. And we'll just kind of go back and so again, so just to reiterate, there's 6 categories of what these actions that can help deliver effective research. The purpose is clearly defined. We talked about that. The research design is thoroughly planned and executed. there's a high ethical standards that are applied. And again, we have to protect the data of those who are involved in the research study. Many times you have to have people that have to sign waivers, have to sign documents that allow you to use their information or to even use them in the study. But we want to make sure that we are protecting them, not only their data and identity, but also protecting them physically, because in some research studies, especially those that involve pharmaceuticals and other medical types of studies, could result in injury and maybe even doing research on autonomous vehicles, since with passengers who have no control over the autonomous vehicles, they're sitting there. A lot of times they will use these mannequins for things like that, but if they wanted to get that actual human interaction, then they would use people, and there could be some risk involved in doing that. Adequate analysis for decision makers' needs. So we talked about that. Researcher checks the data for reliability and validity, how valid it might be. And then we talked about how the limitations need to be, frankly, revealed. Meaning, you don't hold anything back. You just put it out there. You say these were the limits of the study. Then the findings are reported unambiguously, so that those who are not data analysts or persons who are the experts in those fields would be able to interpret the data in that way. So okay, so here, go ahead and let's see here. So that's all I have for this lecture. I would love it if you guys were a little more people would speak up. That would be great. I'd love to hear from you, and we have more participants in this lecture. The reason I say that is because it really helps to get the information and the content into your minds, and to help you to retain it when you are sharing your perspectives, because each one of you is unique, and so you see it from a different perspective, as we've seen just in some of the comments that are being made here. There is no right or wrong in these. We do the polls. The polls help us to see how well you're interpreting the information that is being taught and what you're reading. So don't be concerned about having the wrong answer. It's instructive for us to hear how you are interpreting what is being taught. So just keep that in mind going forward in future lectures. Just anything that comes to mind. If you had some question and it wasn't answered during the lecture, that's a great time to speak up. And like I said, you can always type it in the chat if you don't care to speak up on the microphone. So that's just very, very important. So I'll go back to some of the things that I wanted to to remind you, so let me go ahead and share my screen again here. Okay, good. Okay, so again, there's been an issue with the way I've been uploading those quizzes to Moodle, so don't worry about the quizzes. I think I might just focus on the writing assignments. And the reason I say that is because those are easier to, if there is a technical issue, you could still submit writing assignments to me through email, and those can be graded and you can receive credit for that as well. But the quizzes are a little more difficult to do that way. Again, make sure that you go in and you're submitting a post in the week 2 discussion forum. And I appreciate that some of you have responded to some of your classmates. That's really good. It's good to get some feedback on your posts, as well as to provide feedback to your classmates. Add citations whenever you're using information that you've gathered from another source. So, and again, I said to use the APA style. Let me go ahead and give you an example of that. Let me share that one. And APA.
Okay, Professor.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes, I want to find out. You said we should discontinue this. We should discontinue with the quiz 1 and quiz 2 because some of us would not be able to submit that.
Correct. Yeah. So don't worry about the quizzes. You'll receive a credit for the discussions if you were able to participate in those. So make sure you do the discussions. And so those first 2 weeks, and that's how you'll receive a credit for participation, is just by doing those discussions. Don't worry about the quizzes. And I haven't figured out how to make those work, right? Coming up in week 3 and 4, those are writing assignments. So those are very straightforward. You'll have a prompt, and I'll be able to send you the information on those prompts and what you're going to be doing in those writing assignments. So yes, no, do not worry about doing the quizzes for those chapter 1 and chapter 2 quizzes. Yes. Okay, so here, are you seeing my screen where it says supplemental resources, the American Psychological Association?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, good. Okay, so this is a website that I like to use, and it's very good. It'll help you with doing those citations, and just give you all of the. So we'll get some. Here's some examples. And it shows you how to include just. So like I said, in research, this is a big part of research. When you do your literature review and you're talking about some of the research that has gone before your current research, when you're reporting back even to in organizations, you want to make sure that you are citing your sources. So it helps in many ways. Of course, it prevents plagiarism, but beyond that, it also helps you to keep a catalog of where you gather that information, so that you can go back and you can and get that information again. So very, very important to do that. Let me go to the references to let me get some examples here. And then this just shows you how to cite those at the end of your paper. So again, so just practice that. If it isn't something that you've been doing on a regular basis, please just practice that, and so that you can get better at doing that. So let me go ahead and put that in the discussion here in the chat. Okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, that's it for today. Thank you again. I appreciate your patience, and I don't know what was going on with my team, so it was not. It was giving me the login for students, so I didn't have any access to the apps and the controls. But anyway, I enjoyed your comments. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Professor. Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Professor. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Professor. Goodbye.